Every year, I pick a book of the year, the book that had the most impact on my life and ministry, and the one I couldn't put down. For 2019, that book was God of the Long View, Trusting a Timeless God in a Hurried World. The author, David Wigington, has a unique perspective on the work of God in times of waiting and wondering. When we started preparing our study on the promises of God, we felt like David, the guy who wrote the book, would be the best guy in the country to come speak on this promise. And I'm really excited. We were able to work out a time for him to come and speak to our church family. So I want to welcome all our campuses. We're all joining together this week. Welcome. And I welcome you for this special opportunity to hear from a powerful man of God. David leads a great church in Bloomington, Indiana, that very generously partners to reach around the world. In fact, this last weekend, they joined in our offering for Project Rescue, and they're giving over $100,000 to Project Rescue in one day as well. Plus, they had a match, so they're giving almost $200,000 from their church. David also leads Business's Mission, which is a global initiative to reach out to unreached people groups in creative, unconventional ways. I asked David to bring his book with him because I knew you'd want a copy. So if you want him to sign your book, he'll do it. The books are $10. If you need its message and you can't afford it, Cindy and I will buy it for you. So I'll be out there and happy to help you. We're excited that he's here, and he's staying all week. So he's here on Tuesday, he's here Saturday and Sunday. It's a big sacrifice for a pastor to do that, and you are going to love him. And would you welcome for the first time to First NLR, Pastor David Wigington.
Thank you. What a joy to be here. The story of the origins of my book is actually tied to First Assembly North Little Rock. I had invited Pastor Rod to speak at a BAM Businesses Missions event in New York City for me in November of 2018. Pastor Rod was to speak on a Tuesday, and what happened in the interim time leading up to that was Brother Wilmoth, a longtime member of the pastoral team here at First North Little Rock, got very ill. Pastor Rod called me and he said, "Hey, I've got to be here in Little Rock. I can't come." And I filled in for Pastor Rod in the past, so I thought, no big deal. I texted him, I said, "Send me your notes and I'll do it." He said, "Well, I can't do that because all of my notes for this next Tuesday were personal stories from my travels. You can't tell them and with any integrity, and so I can't do that." So here it is, Friday night. I need to raise $1.5 million on Tuesday morning in New York City, and I have nothing to say. And so I went into my office on Saturday morning. I closed the door, locked the door, and I just began to write. And I began to just tell stories about what God was doing around the world, and a theme began to emerge. I found a poem online. It's a 40-year-old poem prayer from Cardinal Dearden, which became the foundation of my message and later the foundation of my book. In part, it goes like this: "It helps now and then to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of God's work. Nothing we do is complete. This is what we're about. We plant seeds that will one day grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way. An opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker." I love this part. We are workers, not master builders. We are ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future, not our own. Somehow, in spite of me, God used that message in a powerful way on that Tuesday in New York City. And when I was finished, two of my really good friends came up to me and said something I don't often hear. They said, "You should write a book about that concept of the God of the long view." 4 weeks later, I was scheduled to have LCL surgery on my left elbow. I called my surgeon, canceled the surgery, and I went into my office and locked the door on Tuesday, December the 11th, 2018. I wrote for 8 days straight, and at the end of 8 days, I walked out with the first draft of my book. When Pastor Rod asked me to speak today, I was super excited to hear the promise that we're talking about because I don't know of one scripture that fits the theme of my book any better. This week's promise is from Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. It says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." When I began to think about and talk about this idea that God is the God of the long view, one of the first realizations that I had is that I don't understand time the same way that God does. The best way I know to illustrate this is to tell you about my son. When my son Nathan was 5 years old, we had a birthday party for him. His friends and our family came, and he got some really nice presents. You know the routine, right? Kid's birthday party. But after the party was over, we were in the car and headed home, and Nathan began to sob uncontrollably. I finally got him calmed down enough to ask him what was wrong, and through his sobs, he managed to tell me that he was sad because his next birthday was a whole year away. You remember that feeling? When you were 5 or 6 and Christmas was over and you realized that next Christmas was a whole year away? It seemed like an eternity, didn't it? When you're 5, another year is 20% of your life. But those of us that are a little bit older now, another year seems like nothing. When you're nearly 50, I'm nearly there, another year is only 2% of your life. That day in the car, I told Nathan what many parents tell their kids in the same situation. It will be here before you know it. Now, God is eternal. He's not 5, he's not 50, he's eternal. Maybe that's why he views time the way that he does. Maybe when we get tired of waiting on God to answer or intervene in our situation, we should hear our Heavenly Father saying, "It's okay, I'm on the way. I'll be there before you know it." Peter says it this way in 2 Peter 3:8. "But you must not forget this one thing, dear friends. A day is like 1,000 years to the Lord, and 1,000 years is like the day." And we love that verse. Well, we love part of that verse. We love it when God accomplishes something in one day that we think could take 1,000 years. We don't love it so much when we think something should take a day and God takes 1,000 years to do it. But God works both ways. You've probably heard the cliche that delay doesn't mean denial, and it's true. It's why Paul says, don't stop doing good. In the proper time, God will act, and we will see a harvest. You've prayed, you've given, you've worked, and nothing happens. Don't give up. Don't stop. Instead, while you're waiting, celebrate that God is working. Because we know that God is always working. We need to celebrate. We need to learn to celebrate God's delay in the same way that we celebrate his deliverance. God sees time differently than we do. And here's one of the principles I've learned. God's timing is always perfect. My timing is always flawed. I met my friend Craig in 1999. Craig is a professional golfer. He played on the PGA Tour and the Nationwide Tour for about 25 years. I met him on a driving range across the street from our church. We became fast friends. Before long, we were going to lunch with one another, playing golf together. Craig assigns everyone in his life a nickname. Mine was Preach. My boys began calling him Uncle Craig. His girls were born shortly after, and they began to call me Uncle Peach because they couldn't pronounce their R's just yet. I'm still Uncle Peach to this day. Craig wasn't a believer. As a matter of fact, he was about as far from a believer as you'll ever find. So a few months after we met, I did what any good preacher would do. I invited him to church on Easter. And every Easter at our church, we do a survey. We ask everyone in attendance to check a box next to one of the following statements that best describes where they are in their journey with Christ. I'm a committed follower of Jesus Christ. Today, I'm making a decision to become a follower of Jesus Christ. I'm on the journey, but I'm not there yet, or I'm not interested. Leading up to that first Easter with Craig, I knew he was going to be there, and I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed, and I really believed that God was going to save him that very first Easter. I told our ushers right after service, take those survey cards back to my desk, and before I went to lunch with my family, I went and I began to thumb through those cards. As I thumbed through the cards, my eyes landed on a card with his name at the top, and there it was, the box checked. I'm not interested. I was devastated. But I continued to build a relationship with Craig. The next year I invited him to Easter again. I thought surely this would be the year. I'm not interested. And the next year, and the year after that. One year, he even went out of his way to tell me that he had come to Easter services because he knew it was important to me, but that they really weren't interested in becoming followers of Jesus Christ, and perhaps they never would be. This went on for 9 years. We walked with Craig and his daughters through a nasty divorce. But every year, Craig would come to Easter services, and every year, the answer would be the same. I'm not interested. Easter 2009, the answer was different. Craig was different. That year, the answer was, I'm on the journey, but I'm not there yet. It took 12 more months of praying and believing. On Easter Sunday, April 4th, 2010, Easter Sunday afternoon, I was going through the stack of Easter surveys on my desk, and I came across a familiar handwriting. But this time the box was checked that said, today I'm making a decision to become a follower of Jesus Christ. I stood in my office and cried. I still have that card in my desk today. It took 11 years of prayers, of lunches, of investment, of caddying, of designated driving. So many times in those 11 years I thought, God, it's not worth it. He's never going to change. Until he did. I got a call last Friday from Craig. I thought something was wrong. I could hear him crying on the other end of the phone. He said, Preach, I realize I never told you thank you. I said, thank me for what? He said, thank you for saving my eternal soul. I said, Craig, I didn't save your eternal soul. Jesus did. He said, I know. He said, but if it weren't for you, I'd probably still be lost. That's why Paul says, don't get weary in doing good. At just the right time, God will show up. Watching God transform Craig's life over a decade instead of over an instant, I learned this principle. If I can be faithful now, I can be fruitful later. In the summer of 2016, I learned a different principle about how God works. I visited Tunis, the capital of the country, Tunisia. I examined the possibility of growing the church in this very difficult place. When I arrived to check into my room, there was a small gift bag on the desk in my hotel room. It's not an unusual occurrence when you travel. But at least one of the contents of the gift bag stood out to me as unusual. Usually a welcome gift will contain a bottle of water and some snacks for the room, a map of the local area, some breath mints, etc. But this welcome bag had all of those amenities and a few more, but along with them was a rather unusual gift, a bottle of olive oil. I asked our host at dinner that night about the unique gift and what I was supposed to do with olive oil in my hotel room. He educated me about the olive oil industry in Tunisia. Tunisia is the fourth largest producer of olive oil in the world, behind three much larger countries, Spain, Italy, and Greece. Olive oil is a big deal there. It's a source of national pride. But it wasn't always that way. A friend on the trip may have given me a clue as to how the industry started. He showed me an inscription found on a tombstone just outside of modern-day Tunis. The inscription is over 1,600 years old, from the first half of the 5th century. The Latin inscription translated says this: "Here lies Dion, a pious man. He lived 80 years and planted 4,000 trees." The life of Dion doesn't appear in any chronicles anywhere else. Apparently, he wasn't remarkable in any historic sense. He didn't conquer empires or rule a nation. He was just an ordinary guy. He lived, he planted trees, he died. That's it. Dion was a believer, which is rather unusual in 5th century North Africa. But Dion understood the long view. An olive tree can take more than a decade to start producing its first fruit. We don't know if Dion lived long enough to see all of his olive oils start producing fruit, all of his olive trees producing fruit, or if he saw any of them producing fruit. But for Dion, that apparently wasn't the point. His inscription doesn't say, "Here lies Dion, he lived 80 years and made a fortune in the olive industry." He planted. He planted. And today, because of unknowns like Dion, who planted thousands of trees, there's an olive oil industry large enough to impact the world commodities markets. An olive tree can live over 2,000 years. Many of the olive trees that Dion planted are still alive and producing olives today. Paul says it this way in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. I planted the seed in your hearts, and Apollos watered, but God has made it grow. It's not important who does the planting or who does the watering. What's important is that God makes the seed grow. The one who plants and the one who waters work together with the same purpose, and both will be rewarded for their hard work. See, we often get frustrated when we don't see the answer to our prayers. But the reality of how God often works is that we don't own our prayers. We may be laying a foundation of work and prayer so that God can work through someone else to answer the prayers. We may be planting or watering seeds that we will never get to see grow. Oswald Chambers said it this way. He said, I want to tell you a growing conviction with me, and that is that as we obey the leadings of the Spirit of God, we enable God to answer the prayers of other people. I mean that our lives, my life, is the answer to someone's prayer prayed centuries ago. Some of you are the product of a praying grandparent. Some of you have a godly heritage that goes back 2 or 3 or 4 generations. You're the answer to their prayers. And here's the principle that little bottle of olive oil in my hotel room taught me. If I can be faithful now, someone else can be faithful, fruitful later. Just because we don't see God working doesn't mean that He isn't working. We need to listen closely and hear Him saying, keep working. Don't give up. What you're doing is good. I'm coming at just the right time. I'm bringing a great harvest. Everything God does is worth waiting for. So often we read the Bible with the benefit of hindsight because we know the end of the story, right? We don't see the biblical characters living in the tension of unanswered prayers that we seem to live in all our lives. We don't see the gut-wrenching anguish that biblical characters are going through before God shows up in their stories. Can you imagine if Twitter existed in the Old and New Testaments? Some of their social media posts might give us insight into the turmoil they were living before God intervened. Can you imagine Daniel caught in the lion's den, tweeting in the middle of his story? If you want to land a night in a sketchy cave full of hungry lions, break the no praying law. Hashtag praying harder now. Hashtag circle of life. Hashtag Hakuna Matata. Or can you imagine Mary, the mother of baby Jesus, but really just a scared 12 or 13-year-old girl? In the middle of the story, she might have tweeted, anyone have any tips for convincing your fiance you didn't cheat on him and that God is the hashtag baby daddy, hashtag uncharted territory? Or her fiance Joseph, perhaps he would have tweeted, since no one uses Twitter anymore, I figured this would be a safe outlet to say I'm probably going to divorce Mary quietly. She crazy, hashtag relationship goals, hashtag not. When we read about these biblical characters, we have the benefit of knowing the end of the story. God delivered Daniel. Mary and Joseph are now celebrated as the earthly parents of Jesus each Christmas in nativities in millions of homes around the world. Because we know the end, we tend to think there was no tension in the middle of the story. There was. Here's what Daniel, Mary, Joseph, and dozens of other biblical characters had in common. They didn't give up before God showed up. Don't ever give up on God in the middle of your story. He keeps His promises.
God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant, of faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you do just what you said. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it'll come to pass.
Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your
from age to age, through the earth they pass away. Your word remains the same. Your history can prove there's nothing you can do. You are faithful and true. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Thank you, Jesus.
Oh, your faithfulness, it never runs out. It never runs out. Ooh, your faithfulness, oh, it never runs out. It never runs out. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation.
He'll never let me down.
I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation.
He'll never let me down.
I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation.
He'll never let me down. He'll never let me down. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to
From the rising sun,
the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
The Yunnan province is one of the most unreached places in China. It's really hard to get there. We traveled 27 hours to get to the Yunnan province, to a small town of 1 million people, to protect the identity of the town. I won't use the name of the town. When I say this is remote, let me tell you, our group of 16 Americans was the largest group of foreigners to ever visit the town. Our workers have started a coffee shop in this town. It's the only coffee shop in a town of 1 million people. This is a tea drinking culture. It's actually the only foreign-owned business in town. There is no Dunkin' Donuts. There's no Starbucks. There's no McDonald's. But people are developing a taste for coffee. And so they come, they drink coffee, they build relationships with our team, and they get an opportunity to hear about Jesus. One young man rides 2 hours every day on a bus after school to come and have coffee and hear about Jesus. After several months, he prayed a prayer with our team members and became a follower of Jesus Christ. He's the first member of the first church that God is building in this town. Our team began having a desire to expand beyond this town into the surrounding villages. And one of the locals mentioned that in the mountains around the Yunnan province, surrounding the town, there were coffee plantations. Well, how could this be? In a tea-drinking culture where people don't drink coffee, how could there be coffee plantations? After a little research, our workers found this actually to be true. The Yunnan province produces 90% of the coffee beans in all of China. Starbucks even recently released a Yunnan coffee blend. In China, you just can't go visit wherever you want. In every town I visited while I was there, I had to present my passport to be registered with the police. Someone is always watching. So our team can't just go evangelizing through the mountains. They have to have a reason to be there. They have to register when they arrive. But now, because we know that there are coffee beans being grown in those villages, we have a reason to be in the villages. We're buying our coffee beans for our coffee shop from the coffee plantation. But how did people who don't drink coffee come to grow coffee? Well, that's where the idea of the God of the long view comes into play. In 1852, a French missionary by the name of Père Charles Renou came to the mountains of the Yunnan province. He came to try to build the church amongst the Yi people group, the same people group that our team is working amongst today. He had no success in building the church. Today there are no churches, there are no believers in those mountains. But Renou brought something else with him besides the gospel. He loved coffee, and he was a French person, so we know he was probably a bit of a coffee snob. So he brought with him 2 of his own coffee plants. He brought plants so that he could grow, roast, and brew his own coffee. But he found that the environment was perfect for growing coffee, and so he taught the locals about the coffee trade and showed them that in addition to growing tea, they could also grow and export coffee. And one of the 2 original plants brought in 1852 by Renou still exists today. Here's what's amazing if you haven't put it together yet. God sent a French missionary 158 years ago to bring coffee to a region of China where it didn't exist so that our team could have legitimate access to hundreds of thousands of people working in those coffee plantations today. If the missionary hadn't come, there'd be no coffee, there'd be no reason for us to be there. And there would be countless people that would never be able to have an encounter with Jesus. That's the God of the long view. If we had started an English center, a gym, a tour company, a restaurant, something else, anything else, we wouldn't have access to those villages. But we prayed and we asked God to direct us, and we started a coffee shop. And 168 years earlier, I believe the God of the long view knew that the only way for us to gain access to those villages was to send a French missionary to teach them how to grow coffee. Our team leader's wife met a young lady at the store one day. Her English name is Lucky. The young lady told our team leader that she was the first white person and the first Christian that she'd ever met. Our worker got to know Lucky and talked to her about Jesus. Lucky said many times to her, "That's fine for you, that's fine for Americans, but Jesus just isn't for Chinese people." Our team leaders were expecting a baby, and they felt very strongly that God had told them they should have the baby in the town that they were called to. When the time came for the baby to be delivered, our leadership brought in a Western midwife, and our team leader's wife's friend, Lucky, was there. Things didn't go well. The baby was born without any incident, but shortly after, the team member's wife began hemorrhaging. There's no hospital in this town. The nearest good health care is a full day's travel away, and the Western midwife was helpless without any knowledge of the local language, so it fell to Lucky to help. The midwife said they needed some medication and an IV, or the new mom wasn't going to survive. And Lucky called everyone she knew. Everyone said no. What you are asking for just isn't done in China. It's just not possible in China, they said. After several phone calls, the situation was getting more and more desperate. Our team member was bleeding to death. And Lucky decided to do something she'd never done before. She stopped to pray. She prayed to the God that she had seen her American friends pray to over and over again. She asked God to intervene and help her, and she picked up the phone and called a man who had already told her no, but this time the answer was different. This time he said he would come. He would bring an IV. He would bring the medication. Our team member's life was spared, and for the first time in her life, Lucky thought that maybe, just maybe, the God of the Americans wasn't just for the Americans. A few weeks later, our team members flew back to the States to get further medical treatment, and while they were out of China, Lucky walked into our coffee shop one day, and amidst the burr of the coffee grinders and the steam of the espresso machine, one of our team members led her in a prayer to ask Jesus into her heart. Lucky is the second member of the first church that God is building in this town, a church that was founded 168 years ago by a French missionary who brought coffee plants. When God sent Père Charles Renaud to that province, I believe he had Lucky in mind. And no matter where you are right now, no matter what you're going through, no matter what your struggle is, I want you to know that you can know God has you in his mind as well. You've prayed and your child is still running from God. You've given and your business is still struggling. You've fasted and your marriage is still in ruins. Don't give up. Keep working. Keep praying. Keep giving. Stay faithful, because at just the right time, God, who has always had a plan for you, will show up and give you exactly what you need. God has you in mind. Don't give up before he shows up. My friend Dr. Alan Johnson read my book, gave it to his wife, sent me this email a couple of weeks ago. He said, "We loved your book." He said, "But I had to tell you a story about our granddaughter. We thought it was great, went right along with your book." He said, "Our granddaughter goes to an elementary school, and she came home, and we called her from halfway around the world because they're missionaries. We said, 'What'd you do at school today?' He said, 'Our granddaughter was so disappointed. She said it was awful.' He said, 'Well, what did you do?' And she said, 'All we did, Grandpa, all we did was plant seeds, and they didn't even grow.'" And you know, maybe that's where you're at right now. You say, "Pastor, that's all I've done is plant seeds. All my life, I've given, I've been faithful, I've volunteered at church, I've put God first. All I've done is plant seeds, and they didn't even grow." Don't give up. Don't give up. God has you in mind. God has a plan for you. God's going to deliver you. He's going to show up right on time. His promises are always true. Don't give up on God. I want to pray for you. Maybe that's what you're going through right now. You're going through a delayed promise. And God's asking you in this moment to step back and have a bit of a long view and trust that you're a 5-year-old that thinks it's going to be a long time till your next birthday. Trust that he sees what you don't see. He sees a perspective that you don't see, and he has a plan, and he will show up at just the right time. Let me pray for you. Jesus, thank you that every promise in the book is true and belongs to us. Thank you today for the promise that even when we don't see you working, you are working on our behalf. Père Renaud probably left this earthly life feeling like a failure, feeling like that elementary school girl. All I did was plant seeds and they didn't even grow. And some of us feel that way today too. But God, even when we don't see you working, you're there, working on our behalf, working to deliver, and your timing is always perfect. So God, we'll wait. We'll wait for you to show up and show out in our need. We'll wait until your time is right, and we will trust you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you, I worship you. You are here, you're healing every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you, I worship you. Are here, you're mending every heart. We worship you, we worship you, I worship you. We call you Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. We call you Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. We call you Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 That is who you are.
Somebody praise the mighty name of Jesus. Hallelujah. Your God is working. Your God is working. You can trust in Him. He's always in control.